Most people get their health insurance through their employer, through employment. In America, work and health insurance go hand in hand. Thus, a work requirement for Medicaid health insurance makes perfect sense.
There have been concerns from liberals that work requirements for Medicaid and other government programs would discourage people from enrolling. Others, they warn, may lose coverage. But Taylor is not budging.
The Medicaid expansion is an expansion for able-bodied working-age adults. That's the main thing that people have to keep in mind, that Medicaid expansion is expanding free health care insurance to able-bodied adults. The Medicaid work requirements that you're seeing states like Mississippi pursue are very generous and very flexible.
I'm Chris Woodward.
An immigration attorney is encouraged by recent statistics from the Department of Homeland Security related to immigration enforcement.
The Department of Homeland Security says that in just a little more than 7 months into fiscal year 2018, it has already more than doubled the number of businesses it has investigated or audited for breaking immigration hiring laws from all of fiscal year 2017. DHS also reports that it has nearly quadrupled the number of arrests it has made. The surge came after U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Chief Thomas Homan ordered the renewed focus on interior enforcement. Art Arthur is a resident fellow in law and policy at the Center for Immigration Studies. He says these numbers reflect a policy change.
For years through the Obama administration, a significant amount of resources were expended identifying aliens illegally present in the United States and then not placing them into proceedings because they didn't meet one of the so-called priority goals. Acting Director Tom Homan has stated that any alien unlawfully present in the United States is subject to being removed.
Arthur says this will discourage more people from entering the country illegally.
By having a program in which any alien unlawfully present in the United States could potentially be removed, it sends a signal to aliens who are considering entering the United States illegally that they shouldn't do so because there's a possibility that they could be apprehended, detained, and removed from the United States.
I'm Chad Groening.
4 states are casting ballots today as the 2018 midterm elections take shape. Voters in Arkansas, Georgia, and Kentucky hold primaries, while Texans settle several primary runoffs. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Lonnie Poindexter.
Don't ever ask God for patience. Just say, oh, Lord, help me to be more patient. No, don't do that. Well, why, Lonnie? Why shouldn't I do that? He'll give it to you, but you're not going to like how you get it. Well, Lonnie, what do you mean? How do you get patience? Trials and tribulations, my brethren. That's how you get it.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Love is everlasting, love is only kind, love is always patient, love will blow your mind.
Next guest has an extreme proposal to stop this from happening. Boycott sending your kids to school until there are real reforms. Joining me, Arnie Duncan, managing partner at the Emerson Collective and former Secretary of Education. Arnie, are you serious about this? Stop sending your kids to school?
Katie, we have to just think radically different than we ever have. As adults, we're failing to keep our kids safe. We have to create a level of tension, honestly, that will help us break through politically. What's happening is just, it's heartbreaking, it's unacceptable, and we have to do better. So if that's what it takes, we have to consider it. We have to consider everything. The status quo, just continuing to be complacent, for me, is what's beyond unacceptable.
The residents of that town in Texas where the shooting happened are not blaming guns. They're not blaming the need for more reforms. They're saying that it has more to do with the community and lack of church in that community. Do you think that they've got something of a point there, that guns are out there and we need to build a stronger sense of community, build stronger ties within the community?
Katie, every single year we have exponentially more people killed by guns than any other civilized nation on the planet. Every single year we have more mass shootings than any other nation on the planet. Every year we have more school shootings than every other nation on the planet. This is not a local issue. This is a made in America issue. And you can draw a direct line to the number of guns we have, the easy access, the easy availability of guns, and the number of children and adults who get killed every single year.
Wow. Well, he's wrong. And who was that? It's former President Obama's education secretary, Arnie Duncan. And he had a lot to say on a program on mainstream television about how we need to pull our kids out of public school. Now, if you have kids in public school, he's talking to you. If your kids are not in public school, the presumption is that they're safer because they're not in a gun-free zone. That is the inference that you are to make from his statement, because he's talking about public school kids. That's his area of expertise. He was, the head of the Department of Education, for public schools, the government-run schools. Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack here, and welcome to the show. Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right. StaceyOnTheRight.com is a website where you can subscribe, and you get the newsletter if you do that. So hit the subscribe button, and you're going to see a lot of cool information coming your way once a week. And then go over to urbanfamilytalk.com, read some of the articles there. And then, of course, AFR.net for our parent, American Family Radio. Fantastic to be with you today. Happy Tuesday to you. And welcome to our new affiliates in Georgia and Florida. Thanks so much for being with us. And let's get into what's going to be on the show today. So we have Kelly Markham. She's from the Family Research Center. She's going to come on and talk to us about the panic that's running through the Democrats as they see one of their primary funding sources, Planned Parenthood, having less government tax dollars with which to fund Democrat campaigning. Yeah, were you aware of that? We give $548 million plus. That's just the primary funding. There's other funding that comes from the government to Planned Parenthood. Well, then Planned Parenthood spends $30 million a year on Democrats, zero on Republicans, but $30 million a year on Democrats. They give them that money, and those were supposed to be family planning dollars, weren't they? Isn't that what we were told? So Democrats are panicking about that. And then in hour two, we have Stephen Solomon. He's a radio host. He has been on the program before. He'll be back with us today to talk news of the day. And of course, we're going to be discussing the surveillance of the Trump campaign, and Vice President Pence made a statement about it. And of course, the gun control issue, gun control, gun control, gun control. I was on NRA TV today talking about it with Mr. Stinchfield, Grant Stinchfield, and we were discussing just how much the language has changed over the course of the intervening years since Columbine, where it was such a rarity. But there's something that happened right after Columbine, and it continues to happen to this day, and I think people are missing it. So we're gonna delve into that. But first, this was a kind of a wide-ranging interview. It lasted over 10 minutes, but I have a couple of little bits of it for you today here on the show. We got Arnie Duncan talking about what should happen after Labor Day. So in his mind, Labor Day comes around, and instead of going back to school, as most families will be doing, they either start right before Labor Day or they start right after. He's saying, you need to take a few days, and not just parents keep kids home, but administrators and teachers stay home as well, because that's the way that you can impact the voter booth. You can get people's attention. And then after you've done that, you can go to the polls in the midterms in November, and you can exact change by eliminating people who don't want gun control. So notice how he's not talking about school safety, and we'll get into that a little bit later, his feelings on hardening schools, et cetera, et cetera. It's straight up Marxist ideology that he's pumping out here. He says post-Labor Day, keep your kids home. Teachers, stay home. Let's impact the midterms. It's number two.
You're asking parents to take their kids out of school and keep them out of school until real reforms are enacted. What are those real reforms? Are you saying repeal the Second Amendment?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Not even close. But what I am saying is, let's think about when we go back to school in the fall, post-Labor Day, that first week there, leading up into the November elections. What if we took a couple days, kids, teachers, parents together to say, enough. We have to do something better. If we get a breakthrough, fantastic. If not, everyone goes to the voting booth in November, and politicians who have refused to move, who have refused to listen, have to pay a price for that.
So how does that save lives? How does electing one group or unelecting another group save lives? I'm talking about the issue that he was brought on to discuss was what specific gun control proposals would save lives. The banning of the AR-15, which has been the constant drumbeat for the past, I mean, honestly, it's been at least a couple of years now that they've been really focused on that weapon. So this kid used a Remington 800. It's a shotgun. And in the truest sense of militarized weapons, the Remington 800 could be considered a military weapon because so many militaries around the world use it as their standard issue. But there's more than that. He also made bombs, carbon bombs that he was able to find the instructions for online. And these bombs are made out of common household materials. So in this instance, this kid, he puts the bombs all around. He goes in with a shotgun and a revolver, a .38 revolver, which is not a bad, it's not recommended that you use a revolver for home defense or for personal defense simply because it has a capacity limitation. It only holds 6 rounds. When you're talking about personal defense, you want more than 6 rounds. That's what they teach you when you go to classes about defending yourself and concealed carriage. You can use a revolver, but you know you're limited 6 rounds, then you have to reload. You don't have the capacity of having an additional one in the chamber. Chambering around enabling you to have 1 extra bullet inside of the magazine, and you also can't have an extended magazine because you can get extended magazines for many of the guns that are popular for concealed carry, and that will enable you to have 9 with 1 in the chamber or 8 with 1 in the chamber. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that obviously you're going to hear here on this show because I actually have gone and gotten some training. I've taken the time to try to figure out and know just a little bit more than big black gun equal bad thing. You know, I can get a little further than that. So there are different capabilities for each firearm. But the fact is, whether liberals want to call these guns less lethal or not, the fact is those guns killed 10 students and then wounded 10 more people. So it's not about supposed lethality. And again, once more with the information-based programming, less lethal refers to tasers, pepper spray, that kind of stuff. When law enforcement officials say less lethal means of control, they're talking about pepper spray, mace, tasers, stun guns, things that don't kill or have the ability to kill you on the first go round. I mean, mace doesn't kill at all. Neither does pepper spray. Those are not for killing. That's why they're called less lethal. So we have the taking of terms, and really they're completely twisting them in such a way that nothing means anything anymore. Certain words that used to have a specific meaning, like military grade meaning it's full auto. 1 squeeze, multiple bullets come from the chamber. Or military grade meaning it takes a certain caliber of ammunition that's not available to the public. Or military grade meaning it is a firearm that is manufactured specifically for use by U.S. Armed Forces, not for civilian use. That a different version of it exists for the civilians to use, but it has different capabilities and a completely different model, make and model for military use. Now that just means any gun that's black and long, any gun that has a handle on the bottom. That must be military grade. Really? Because those words have meaning. So in the course of us allowing this evolution of words, this complete, just let's throw dictionaries out of just don't even pay attention. Why should we actually have definitions for words when it just can mean whatever you feel like it should mean at the time, whatever best serves your political aspirations or your motivations? And that's what we're seeing. So I encourage you, one of the best things about living right now in this day and age is that there is no excuse for being idiotic. There is no excuse for not understanding the difference between a Remington 800 and an AR-15, or the difference between a Remington 800 and a Mossberg 500. Both 2 commonly held, commonly owned, commonly used shotguns. There's no difference. There's no reason why you should know or not know what the difference is between an AR-15 and an M4 or an M16 or an AK-47. You should know the difference between those weapons if you're going to talk about guns. Why? Because you're a gun nut? No. but because you want to be informed and you want to not be peddling information that's not true. So I didn't cut for you where he goes into all these statistics about there being 22 mass shootings so far this year, which is an easily debunkable claim. There have not been 22 mass shootings in this calendar year. There have been more than 22 shootings, but the definition of a mass shooting is very specific. And in order for it to meet that criteria, certain things have to be present, certain elements have to have occurred, and then it's considered a mass shooting. And then it qualifies and is counted with the remaining total. He's wrong about that. So if you hear people talking about there have been 22 mass shootings so far this calendar year, they are not being honest with you. That is not correct. But more than any of this, we're talking about guns, the number of shootings, the calibers of the firearms, that, you know, the fact that this kid had a .38 revolver, which again, he used what his dad had. He stole the weapons from his parent. Had his parent had an AR-15, that's probably what he would have used. He wasn't picky. He was interested in killing people. So the question is why? So I have said, you know, I think it's an atrocity that so many in public education and honestly private education too, they're so willing to turn a deaf eye to kids who are bullied. And someone pointed out to me that kids have been getting bullied since, you know, Cain and Abel, but they haven't always shot each other. And it's true. Remember, 30, 40 years ago, you could bring a gun to school. The bus driver would hold it for you until after school when you had rifle club. Almost every teenager who had a car also had a rifle in their car or truck. They just had one. You not only could bring rifles to school, if you wanted a rifle, you could go to the Sears catalog and call the order in or mail in a check, and they would mail the gun to your house. No background check, none of that stuff. Just, you would need to buy a shotgun, you just order it from Sears. So kids had lots of guns available. They were bullied, yet magically there weren't as many school shootings. So what's the difference? You know, I would point to kids being taught that masculinity is toxic. I would point to the zero tolerance policies that mean if you defend yourself at school, you get suspended just like the bully. I would point to the fact that back in the day, boys who had problems with each other could meet after school. And I don't advocate for fighting, but in this world where men are jousting and constantly dealing with each other, the way for them to settle scores was two of them would fight, one would win, and afterwards, within 24 hours, these same boys who were fighting on the playground would be friends again. Now you've got kids getting beaten up over sustained periods of time and coming back and shooting up everybody in the place. There's a huge difference. There's more to it. I'll have more to discuss with you on this subject, but I want these things to be marinating in our mind as to what has changed since everybody had a gun and it was all in the car and everything and you didn't need a background check to now. And will more control fix it? I'm thinking not. We'll have Kelly Markham right after these messages. Stay there.
Meet Dan Steiner, president of Preborn.
Jill came into our center about 8 months ago, and she was in a really difficult spot because her husband her boyfriend was incarcerated. She didn't have a place to live. She's out on the street. She came into our center, and when she saw her baby on the ultrasound, she says, I've got to find a way to do this. She changed from abortion-minded to wanting to choose life for her baby, and that's where we came in, coming beside that ultrasound with baby clothes, with housing for her. Her baby just delivered last Wednesday. It's a little boy. He's beautiful. That's the power of ultrasound.
80% of women choose life when they see their baby on ultrasound. To find out more about how you can help save a baby's life, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. Not long ago, a friend of mine told me that he had gotten this super-duper deal on the car he'd always wanted. He had been shopping for this car for months, but couldn't swing the price or find the deal he wanted. To his amazement, he opened the newspaper one morning and saw an ad for 0% financing on the exact car he was looking for. The salesman told him he had come in on the last day of the offer. In other words, if he had waited another day, the deal would have been off. In life, as in shopping for cars, sometimes we have limited windows of opportunity as Christians. Think of the scenario in Numbers chapter 14. God told the Israelites to do something, but they rebelled. They sent in the covert ops, who came back with a mixed report. Caleb and Joshua, representing the minority, said, yes, God can do it, and this is our window of opportunity. But the majority prevailed. They chickened out, and God judged Israel. So they flip-flopped and decided to do it after they hear the pronouncement of God's judgment. Listen to these words, Numbers chapter 14, verses 42 through 45. Do not go up, lest you be struck down before your enemies, for the Lord is not among you, for you will fall by the sword. Verse 45. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in the hill country came down and struck them and beat them down as far as Hormah. They had delayed their obedience to God, and when we delay our obedience to God, he says, no, you can't move out when you want to. You've got to go when I tell you to go. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. We need to guard against the sin of impatience. But when God says go, get moving.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. We're still working on getting our guests together, live radio. So let's continue on with the discussion that we're having about this crazy idea that somehow controlling the guns is the issue that we're having with America's students. There's a lot of misinformation that's going around out there. A lot of information that really it's meant to just rile you up and get you in your feelings so you can be motivated to vote in the midterms. It has zero to do with protecting children at schools. Now, I understand there are some good ideas about helping kids cope with the kinds of problems that we're seeing at schools. And the idea that we're going to go back to, letting kids fight things out in the schoolyard is probably not, it's just probably not going to happen. But there are things that we can do to promote conflict resolution with kids. And it starts with the adults. Kids who are persistently bullied should be assisted by the people in authority, not looked down on or told, well, just handle it yourself. We see what that's getting us. But there's an even larger issue than that. In public schools, it used to be mandatory that you read the Bible at some point during the day in public school. Yes, in public school. And it had a civilizing effect, as the Word of God often does. That's why we're encouraged to read it. It renews our minds. It sanctifies us. It changes our outlook. It civilizes us. And so for kids who are going to school and taking out their frustrations on other students, wouldn't it be great if their instructors, their teachers, their coaches would say, I see the way you're treating John. I see the way you seem like you always have your hands on him. First of all, that's outside of school policy and you're not allowed to do that. But in detention today, instead of just sitting there and staring at the ceiling, I want to get into God's word a little bit and talk to you about what we have for you. So in all of that, we're looking at a lot of different mechanisms that they're pushing back. People are absolutely unhappy with the idea that one of the answers to the problems that we're facing could possibly be that we need to return to our more traditional history. We used to absolutely counsel children, you not only shall you not kill, you shan't hit. We had the 10 Commandments. We had a way of everyone understanding what right and wrong was. And it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect, but it was better than this. Fewer children were doing this kind of stuff. Fewer kids felt the need to go to school and shoot things up. So one of the other things I pointed to that I kind of alluded to wanting to discuss, and it's still in the same vein, is obviously that one of the issues that I'm seeing, and I think others are noticing it too, is that the name of the person who does the shooting is immediately trumpeted out over media. They go into this big, long expose, 8 things you need to know about the shooter, 5 things you need to know about the shooter. Who was he? Where did he go to school? And so they start to really, he was a troubled young man. Okay, all right. You get so far into that it becomes more like a publicity piece. It becomes more like a fascination. And then other kids who, what would be better than to go out in a blaze of glory if you feel like you've got nowhere else to turn, nothing else that you can do. It's just, hey, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to do it the way that Dylan Klebold and that other one did, the Columbine boys. And studies have shown that a ton of the thwarted school attacks, when they go in, someone catches it. These are the stories we don't hear about because no one gets killed. They go in, they find the guns, they find whatever the kid was going to do the mass killing with. They look in their journals, they look online, and they find that this person has been doing research on the Columbine kids, that they know the whole Columbine timeline. Would it surprise you to know that if you go online and you research it, there's a huge list of like a timeline and list that you can copy or print off about the Columbine kids, what they did first, how they evolved from just thinking about doing what they did to actually creating a plan and executing on it. They've been turned into almost folk heroes for kids who are not mainstream, kids who are picked on, kids who are gamers or are nerdy or what have you. And so you get a very, very impressionable kid who's never had their foundational basis rooted in Jesus Christ, never had the civilizing impact of reading God's word, never had anyone telling them, this is the kind of stuff that seems like when you're in it, you're in this moment and it seems like it's all that's going on with you and it's never going to get better and you have no way out. You don't have parents to listen to. Your parents aren't listening to you or they're not available. And all you want to do right now is you want to die. You want this to stop. Any means necessary. You just have to get away from this. But there is a way out that doesn't involve you hurting anyone or hurting yourself. Let's talk about that a little bit. They've not heard that. So they turn to this. They turn to the shootings. And I'm not trying to make you feel sympathetic towards school shooters. I think it's depravity. I think it's evil. And they should be punished. But that's why they kill themselves. Because they have no intention of being punished. They will be, of course. But they have no intention of being punished here on this earth. So to dismiss all of those factors, the lack of biblical morals in K through 12 public education, the fact that kids can no longer even bow their head and pray over their food without having somebody come over and say, we don't pray in public here. You can't even bless your food without some busybody coming over and trying to tell you what you can and can't do. There's a whole anti-God fervor that it's so strong. And the kids feel it. If we adults are noticing it and we don't even have to be in those environments, imagine what the kids are going through. They're being taught evolution, that they're just evolved monkeys. The white ones completely evolved. Black ones not quite as evolved just yet, further back on the evolutionary merry-go-round. They're being taught that they're animals and that their sexual urges are just like animals. Just like animals just do it to reproduce. That's why human beings do what they do. There's no control over it. Don't try to put any morality to it or attach it to love. It's just a physical urge that needs to be satisfied. So go right ahead. That's what the kids are being taught. The girls are being taught that you're no different from a man. You can be as aggressive as you want to. Yes, go after him. Yes, use him for physical pleasure. It's just up to you. Do whatever you want. And if you find that this discussion repugnant or disgusting, imagine what kids think when they hear it. Kids don't even want to talk about sex and relationships. They want to avoid those topics until they're into those topics, and then that's all there is. So this is the world we've created for our kids. When I say we We're living here. We're paying for the taxes. Those taxes go to those schools. These things are being taught in the schools. So whether your kids are there or not, whether you're an empty nester or not, or whether you're new to the whole homeowning tax paying tradition and you're in that neighborhood, it's still your tax dollars are still going there. And as much as we may be fighting for pro-life, fighting for traditional morals, something is missing. Some kind of factor is lacking for our success, because the liberals, they've not only taken over the K through 12 education, they've completely ruined it. And now that we're seeing the fruit of that, the fruit of decades of us not being able to have the Bible in schools, not being able to talk to our kids about Jesus Christ in the school building, not being able to comfort kids who are hurting with the word of God. Now we see the results, and their answer is, well, that's because we're not controlling the guns. We're just not controlling the guns. If we just control the guns, everything will be fine. Like we can control the people who own the guns. The ones who aren't going to be criminals, they're already not criminals. And the ones who are criminals are not going to listen to any new laws. They're not listening to the laws we have now. So I saw an op-ed over at Christianity Today, which I was pretty disturbed because, you know, I think Christianity Today is a great website, but the editor over there is calling for basically some gun control measures. It's Christianity Today. We know the human heart is depraved and wicked, and that the law is for the just, right? The only people who are paying attention to it are the ones who want to obey the law. Once someone fixes their mind to disobey the law, what are some additional laws going to do? Nothing. So I want you to, so on the show, Arnie Duncan he's having this back and forth. He starts to talk about, he's spouting off his talking points about the 22 shootings and all that, just, nothing but falsehoods. And then he's asked, but what are you proposing? What would have stopped this school shooting? And she says, arming teachers, maybe hardening the schools. And he says something just absolutely lunacy, just pure madness. It's number 3.
Not at all. I have to push back so hard. This idea of hardening schools, it's just beyond ludicrous. Just think for a minute. How do you harden dismissal time? How do you harden arrival time? How do you harden children riding school buses to and from school? How do you harden recess? That's impossible. Our teachers are there to give love, to nurture, to teach math and reading, not to be armed security guards. That's not the answer. The answer is not more guns, it's less guns and fewer guns in the hands of people who should not have them.
So I don't actually think the number of guns is the issue. Violent crime is actually down. We're experiencing an amazing dip in violent crime in this country. In fact, it's so dramatic that we can now pinpoint the connection between illegal border crossings and the infiltration of MS-13 and hotspots in cities like St. Louis and Chicago and Baltimore, and connect those spikes in violence and death to gang activity and illegal drug peddling and MS-13. It was more difficult to do before because there were more American citizens committing heinous acts. There are fewer now, so it's easier to pinpoint. It's easier to make the connections, and we have better data and reporting. So it's just, what he's just said is just ridiculous. And the idea, I do agree that if you're the kind of person who thinks the only answer is lifting out the guns, then it does sound ridiculous to say we need to harden schools. But we're not having school shootings on buses. We're not having school shootings at recess time. We're having these kids go into the building where they have a captive set of victims, and they know there are no guns present, and there's not anyone who's going to respond, not immediately. They're going to get to kill at least some of the people they want to kill, because even the school resource officer needs some minutes to figure out something's going on and to get there. And so that's why they're going into the school buildings. So logic says, if you harden the school building and make it more difficult in which to create this environment, then you would have less of it. But we're still only on the surface. I agree with hardening the schools. I do. But we're on the surface. If you want to get down to the meat of the matter, if you want to really understand what stops children from turning into killers, then we're back to what are they being taught? Who are they told that they are? Are they told that they are made in the image of Christ, that they're valuable, important people that have been placed here on this earth for such a time as this to accomplish a goal that God has for them? Are they told that God, he not only knows who they are, he's numbered the hair on their head, and he knows them by name. He's written their name on the palm. He's intimately interested in involvement in their life. How many of them have heard that? How many of them know it? They would have every opportunity to reject him because, as we all know, our God does not require your discipleship, that you give in to him. He wants you to give your life to him, but it's your choice. So any child who didn't want to would not be forced to, but how many of them have actually heard? How many of them have heard the gospel? How many of them know that there is another way to live? That there's comfort, that there's healing, that there's redemption, that there's friendship in Jesus Christ. A school of a few thousand students, and these schools exist all over the country. And some Christians definitely go there. It's not like Christians have completely pulled out of public education. We're still there. But try having a Bible study after school at a public school. Try having Bible club. They got every LGBTQ, XYZ, 10,078 million letters behind it club you can think of. They got the rainbow tape over your mouth days and day of silence and this and that, you name it. They've got everything for every sexual perversion. They've got everything glorifying mental illness. They've got everything that teaches kids how not to be what God made them to be. But if it's just the simple, hey, we get together and we read the Bible after school and once a month we pray around the flagpole, well, that's got to be stopped. That's got to be stopped. And so more and more, increasingly around the country, it has been stopped. And what's replacing it? Well, a whole lot of angry kids, a whole lot of kids who are on psychotropic medications. There are some definite normal, like every time we have a school shooting and you look into, there's bullying. Not every time, but most of the time. There's some bullying. There's some rejection going on in the school building that the kid has experienced. Often, there's a psychotropic drug connection where the kid is on ADHD or some kind of additional medication. There's some kind of familial issue. When it's two parents in the home, there's still something going on there. And then the constant in all of it is that nobody wants to talk about how our culture and our society reflects the fact that we've taken God out of almost everything in the public square. He can't be found. Now, you and I know he can be found, but try it in a K through 12 public education. Just take a peek, see. Go down to your local public school and see what you see. You're not going to see the 10 Commandments up on the wall. Now everybody says they're scared. Possibly they should be. All right, when we get back, we'll have Kelly Markham. That was my fault on the show sheet. I have it at 2:20. She's at 2:40. She's at the Family Research Center. She'll be with us right after this.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
Prayer is vitally important in a marriage. After I was named head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Lauren and I felt pulled in 1,000 different directions. Prayer really helped us during that transition. We prayed on the phone together during the day, and the kids and Lauren would pray together in the evenings as a family on the nights I came home late from practice.
Tony and I have prayed together since the beginning of our marriage. It hasn't always been consistent, but it's a priority that we cherish. So don't let a hectic schedule or other excuses get in the way of going to God in prayer. It's the key to success for any marriage.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Who is today's urban woman?
Today's urban woman is about empowering herself, empowering her family to empower our future. We have a wealth of opportunities here in America. There are no excuses. Everyone should be able to empower themselves, educate themselves, and be stewards of our society. Today's urban woman, here to stay, and we're moving forward, never looking backward. I'm Deneen Borelli, and I am today's urban woman.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've seen God open up so many doors for us to help serve and love those who get affected by a natural disaster.
As the trees and the wind started crashing down around us, my wife was, of course, very diligently praying, Lord, please be with us.
Very simply, we do it because God commands us to love others.
I see these volunteers all as a gift from God.
And I'm just grateful they're here, helping out is a blessing.
If you're interested in becoming a part of what God's doing through 8 Days of Hope, please go to 8daysofhope.com, click on Get Involved, submit your email address.
I've noticed that whenever there's a time in my life when things might be a little gloomy, the number one thing that I can do is to go serve somebody.
And I would encourage anyone else to, it's worth it. Come out and do it next time if you didn't make it to this one, and the Father will really bless you in it.
Thank you so much for your prayers and volunteering with 8 Days of Hope.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. AFR.net and urbanfamilytalk.com are the websites. And you can also register for our Marriage and Family Conference. It's coming up August 17th and 18th. And I'm going to be there along with all of the hosts from Urban Family Talk. You're going to get to meet some really fantastic people that you've been listening to possibly for years. You get to shake our hands. We'll get to shake your hands. And I'm going to have Stacy on the Right Show mugs, the hotly anticipated mugs, that you will be able to possibly procure for yourself, as well as other fun things. So definitely consider joining us at the conference in the fall. We look forward to meeting you and getting that good. There's going to be some really great information that we're going to share and learning and experiencing together, all for Christian family values and biblical marriage and biblical family upbringing. So right now it's my pleasure to welcome Kelly Markham. She's of the Family Research Center, and I am so excited to get to speak with you about the Democrats panicking about the executive order from President Trump. One of the best things that he's actually done since he's been president.
Absolutely. We are very excited as well. And it's been a long time coming. These regulations that he's seeking to change have been in place since President Clinton, so it's a long time overdue, and we're very excited to see the changes that he has announced will be coming to the Title X family planning program, most specifically, and I know this is probably what most of your viewers probably appreciate about it, is that it will deny Title X money from going to abortion providers, which is a huge win for the pro-life movement.
It is. So can you talk to us a little bit about, so Title X, most of us are familiar with Title IX, that deals with federal funding for sports and things like that. Title X is reproductive, they call it family planning dollars, but reproductive dollars. Is this a part of the money that we always hear about in the news when we say $548 million a year goes to Planned Parenthood? Is this a part of that?
It is. It's actually their second largest funding stream. About the Title X program sends about $60 million Planned Parenthood's way every year. So it's a big funding stream for them, and importantly, it's a grant program. So they receive the Title X money, and that money, while they say it can't technically be used to fund abortions, it can be used to pay the, whatever it is that keeps Planned Parenthoods up and running. It keeps the lights on, pays the receptionist, pays for their advertising. So it really has turned into a slush fund for Planned Parenthood and for other abortion providers that subsidizes the abortion industry. And fortunately, thanks to President Trump's announcement, we'll see those regulations changed, that organizations that provide abortion will no longer be able to receive Title X money, and so that will, put a bright line that that taxpayer dollars will not be going to subsidize the abortion industry.
Okay, so let's delve down into that a little bit more. So I was, of course, combing the internet, and yesterday we played a little bit of audio from Cecile Richards, the former president of Planned Parenthood. She's still out there doing marketing and media for them, and she went on NPR, National Public Radio, one of their largest programs, one of the nationally syndicated ones, and the host was asking her about this this idea that taxpayers are funding abortion, and she parroted the same old garbage line that 97% of what they do is STD testings, mammograms and mammogram referrals, reproductive health, women's gynecological services, yada, 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 and that abortion comprises 3% of what they do. Now, you and I know that's not true, but how is she able to still get away with that lie?
So the way you're right, it's completely delusional, and we know that it's a fabricated percentage. So basically what they do is they take the number of women, they basically look at the number of services they perform, and which I think is in the 9 million range by their count, and they divide that by their number of abortion patients, which is about 325,000 every year, and that's where they get the 3%. But what they count is a service is get it going in, if a woman goes in, gets a pregnancy test, then decides to get, then discusses, counseling or whatnot regarding an abortion, and then gets an abortion, we would say that's all one abortion patient. They would say that she just received 3 different services.
So in the end,
how they get those numbers.
Yeah,
and
so
it's misleading and false. So the real numbers are somewhere around 14%. And I should point out that 96% of the services they provide for pregnant women, when you look at their prenatal care, their adoption referrals, and their abortion makes up 96% of their services to pregnant women.
So I want to be clear. You go in, you're pregnant, you go into the Planned Parenthood, and the first thing they want to do is verify you're saying you're pregnant, but they want to verify that, so they give you a pregnancy test. Then you say you're having some symptoms, so they give you maybe some STD testing, maybe 3 tests. And so each of these items is logged in as a separate entry, even though the end goal for you is you've gone in and you're hoping to have an abortion. They're hoping you're going to have an abortion. In the end, you end up having an abortion, but on the way to that abortion, you have tests that make it possible for them to give you the abortion, any kind of blood tests, transfusions, anything that you might have that leads up to that end goal is counted as a separate service. So in the end, you really went in for one thing, and that was an abortion, and that's what you got. And that's 100% of the reason why you were there and got all of those other tests. But they count the other 14 tests, procedures, things that they needed to do to you to get you to the abortion table as individual services.
Absolutely. So it'd be like going in for a hip replacement, and you have all of the physical therapy afterwards and the testing beforehand and the x-rays. And so they just say that the hip replacement surgery was only 3% of what happened, even though that was the sole purpose of what you went in for. It's the same thing that they're doing here. They're pretending that the abortion is only 3% of what they do, but when you actually look at the numbers, the number of women that are treated there every year and the number of abortions, it comes out to about 14%.
So 14% of what they do isn't abortion, or 14% of what they do is abortion?
Is abortion.
Okay. So if you take, so what President Trump is saying is, look, you know what? You're going to do abortions. They're legal. You do what you do. But if you want these family planning dollars, they're going to go to clinics where abortions aren't performed. And we have 33,000 of those types of clinics that most Americans are unaware exist. They're federally funded clinics that are in communities across the country. There are multiple numbers of them in every state, all 50 states plus our territories. And they're free, and they have doctors, board-certified doctors, gynecologists, nurses, nurse practitioners who work there. The only thing is they don't do abortions, but they'll do everything else that a woman might need to keep her wellness program going on for family planning or otherwise. So is that where this money will then go, since it's not going to go to Planned Parenthood?
Yes, it will go to organizations that are willing to abide by the new regulations. Now, if Planned Parenthood is willing to say, okay, only the clinics that we have that do not provide abortion, those do exist. There are Planned Parenthood clinics that do not provide abortion. If they're willing to say that only the Title X money will go to those clinics and that we will not refer for abortions, because that's another requirement that Clinton put in place, was that Title X recipients were forced to refer for abortions. President Trump has changed that to say that referring for abortions is prohibited. So if they're willing to meet the requirements, then they're able to get the money. But we don't know, speculation. We don't know how many Planned Parenthood clinics will be willing to make that choice. We all know that abortion is their moneymaker. It's their cash cow. They don't like it being separated. And with the Mexico City policy, they decided, the International Planned Parenthood Federation decided to just not take the funds rather than comply with the pro-life regulations. So we know for them, abortion is, abortion is their idol. It's what they do. It's what their quotas are geared around. And so this new opportunity, this new Title X regulation, will allow those community health centers you mentioned to get more of the money because they actually serve women and they take care of women in rural, underserved areas. And now pro-life organizations who were unable to apply before because of the abortion referral requirement, they can now apply for funding. So women will have many more options to go to for their health care. So ultimately, this is a very pro-woman decision, and it's a pro-life decision, and we couldn't be more excited to see the administration taking action against Planned Parenthood and really trying to pull a little bit more money away from them because they're a horrible organization and they shouldn't be in business.
Well, they shouldn't be getting taxpayer dollars, and they're so flush with cash because the $548 million represents just under half of their total yearly budget of over $1 billion. They actually could supplement their income and replace the federal funding with donations from all of the people in Hollywood and New York and on the east and left coast. They could get their funding together if they wanted to and still do what they do. But I believe it's been my position now for the past almost 10 years that the reason why Democrats, liberals, progressives, but most importantly, people who are pro-abortion are so desperate to maintain the government funding aspect is because as long as the funding comes out of the tax dollars of the American people, there's a complicity that exists that no matter how pro-life I am, I'm still supporting abortion. It's against my will, but I'm still doing it. Now, if I could eliminate that, then I could say, at any gathering, at any cocktail party, at any place where there was a mixed point of view on this subject and someone said, well, I'm pro-choice, I could say, I'm absolutely pro-life and there's no way I would ever support the murder or dismemberment of unborn babies, fetuses, whatever you prefer to call them. And I would actually be telling the truth because I would no longer be supporting it with my tax dollars. And that delineation would become something that would be unbearable for people who support abortion because they know what it is.
Absolutely. And the taxpayer dollars, like you said, it not adds complicity, but it adds validity to their position. If they're receiving government funding, then they must be a valid, above table organization that can be held up. And we both know that's not true, that they've been under criminal investigation now and they're not a good organization, but because they get taxpayer dollar, they can be held up as a valid entity. And so by removing taxpayer dollars, we take away that validity and that legitimacy. And I believe that's really what frightens them more than anything. They talk a lot about providing health care to women, but they're more interested in preserving their own reputation.
I think it's true. And I've even run up against that with people that I genuinely, honestly, Kelly, these are like some of the best women I've ever known, really wonderful moms, wives, everything. But when it comes to abortion, it's almost like you turn a switch and they turn into someone you don't know while they're talking about abortion because of the way they talk about it. There's almost a bloodthirstiness to the discussion when it comes to abortion. When they start talking about how much they support abortion in any case, in every instance, and they don't care about you having an opposition to it, there's almost a walling off of any emotional qualities or feelings or morals. It's just, I support abortion for everyone at any age, up to and after birth, blah, 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 blah. And these are the same people who they would never even put a puppy down that was sick or something. It's just a strange thing.
There's this massive disconnect, and I think that the left, unfortunately, and we know they have mainstream media and Hollywood on their side, that they've made the abortion right into this individual rights, and that it's necessary if women are to be equals in society, that they have to have this ability to kill their own children, which is, of course, not what the early feminists wanted. And, of course, we understand that our God-given ability to bear children is a tremendous blessing, in that in any society that says you can only achieve success by killing your own children is doomed. So it is fascinating that I have many wonderful, wonderful girlfriends as well who, when this issue comes up, they switch just like that, and it's truly horrifying to see that they think this way, and they've been told this narrative for so long. So, at Family Research Council, we do our best to push back against that narrative and to provide a pro-woman and pro-child. I think the theme of the March for Life this year was love them both. And to show that if you really want to fight for women, then you fight for their children too.
Absolutely. And listeners, I said Family Research Center. It's Family Research Council. Tony Perkins is the head of the organization. Kelly Markham, she's coming on today to join us and to discuss this important issue. And I really appreciate your time. Government Affairs Legislative Assistant at the Family Research Council. And it's frc.org, if I'm not mistaken, is the website where you can find out more about their work. I'm just really, really grateful that you were able to come on today. I join you in celebrating what the president is doing. It is an answer to a campaign promise that he made. He's unable to completely defund Planned Parenthood because of the lack of will in Congress. But I believe this is a first step, much needed, and I'm excited to see what else he's going to do.
We are as well. And thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you for coming on. And so Kelly Markham, so good to speak with her. We are up against the top of the hour. We're going to have hour 2 of Stacey on the Right coming up next. I actually am super excited about continuing this discussion. We have a little bit of audio from Meghan McCain talking about how it's just useless to talk about all of this gun control and how there's a bit of a uselessness to it. It's weird. It's just, why do we have to keep talking about gun control? That's not going to change anything. Well, except it could get people riled up to vote in November, and the Democrats need that. So more important than saving lives, I guess. Yeah. All right. So we'll be back with more after these important messages from One News Now and American Family Radio. Keep it here.
As millennials, we have more than $1 trillion in purchasing power. So businesses are watching us. But millennials are losing our faith. So we know Satan is watching us. Engage Magazine is for millennials by millennials. And it speaks to faith, purpose, and a closer walk with Jesus. Because above all, God is watching us. Visit EngageMagazine.net and listen Saturday afternoons at 5:30 Central on AFR.
Truth. Wisdom. Empowered Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh. One suspect is apprehended in Maryland after a police officer was gunned down. Jeff Manasso has the latest.
A 16-year-old boy is in custody, expected to be charged as an adult in the murder of a Baltimore County police officer Monday, who investigators say responded to a robbery call.
Our patrol officer responded, was confronted, and from that point, she was injured.
Police Chief Terrence Sheridan says the officer was run over by the suspect's Jeep. That Jeep has been recovered as the hunt continues in suburban Baltimore for 3 other suspects considered armed and dangerous. The name of that fallen officer not yet released. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The Pope has once again been quoted as saying something contrary to Catholic doctrine. A gay man who was molested by a priest met with Francis and came away quoting the Pope as saying, "God made you that way." Steve Jordahl reports.
At the end of March, an atheist reporter quoted Pope Francis as saying there was no hell. This time, Juan Carlos Cruz traveled from Chile to speak with the pontiff and told a Spanish newspaper the Pope told him, quote, "Juan Carlos, I don't care about you being gay. God made you that way and loves you as you are, and I don't mind." Austin Roos of the Center for Family and Human Rights is skeptical.
Like a lot of these things, we cannot be even remotely sure of what really took place. People generally hear what they want to hear.
He says he has no doubt Pope Francis was comforting to the abuse victim and probably apologized for what the gay priest did to him. But the quote,
"We have to take that with a grain of salt, because that's not what the church teaches. There's just too many inconsistencies in this between what the church teaches and what the Pope is supposed to have said."
Ruse says if you want to know what the church teaches, go to the Catechism, which is very clear on homosexuality.
The church teaches that there is likely a psychological genesis to same-sex attraction, that the attraction is disordered, that acting on the attraction is gravely disordered, objectively evil.
The Vatican, as usual, neither confirmed nor denied the quote. Ruse says the Pope might not want to embarrass the victim by publicly contradicting him. I'm Steve Jordahl.
Susan B. Anthony List is holding its annual Campaign for Life gala tonight. And as Chris Woodward tells us, this year's event features the first.
President Donald Trump will deliver the keynote address for tonight's gala. Mallory Quigley of SBA List says it is the first time a sitting president has ever addressed the organization.
He is certainly governing as the most pro-life president our nation has ever seen.
That includes the announcement last Friday that the Trump administration would make changes to the Title X family planning program that would direct taxpayer funding away from the abortion industry.
It's a huge win for the pro-life movement, for women's health, for unborn children, that the president has is going to issue these new regulations, that the Protect Life rule, to stop abortion businesses from receiving Title X family planning funding, because of course we know abortion is not family planning.
Other scheduled speakers tonight include White House advisor Kellyanne Conway and House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. Model, actress, and businesswoman Kathy Ireland will serve as MC. I'm Chris Woodward.
And finally, cops in upstate New York are looking for someone who flipped out and pulled a gun on a fast food restaurant manager over an order. Ken Duffy reports.
Cops in Albany, New York say a woman flew off the handle last weekend at a McDonald's over an order of small fries. When it took too long to get them, they say she got angry, real angry. Workers told her that she could park her car and they bring them to her, but she wasn't all that patient. She began screaming, cursing them out, even tossed a slushie at the window. Police say that she then parked her car, ran inside the restaurant and said, "I'm coming back for you," then made her way back to the drive-thru window and pulled a gun on the manager. They say she left the scene without the food. Ken Duffy, Fox News.
And stocks are mostly higher as the U.S. and China make more progress on diffusing their trade tensions. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and on the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Hi, my name is Reggie Rogers, the host of Power Jam's Wake Up Show. What, y'all?
Don't leave us out, Brother Rogers.
I'm saying. Mother, I wasn't going to do that, but...
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
When we had this conversation before, we're always talking about gun control, and we said before that, okay, AR-15s, all semi-assault rifles, if they're banned, this won't happen. That's obviously not accurate in this case. He, by the way, also had a pipe bomb, a Molotov cocktail, and a carbon dioxide device, which, by the way, are things you can make in your house as well, like especially a carbon dioxide device, things you can find off the internet and do. You can make bombs. I want to say, Kelly Clarkson, I admire anyone who wants to go out and take a platform and speak on this issue, but for me, I also was like, okay, what does change mean to you? Because she said, I'm a proud gun owner. I have a concealed handgun license. In 2012, she says she has 9 guns, more than me, which is a thing, and sleeps with a Colt 45. So are you now for repealing? I'm curious, someone like that, are you now for repealing the Second Amendment? What are I don't think it's no shade at Kelly Clarkson. I was just curious, given that it surprised me to find out that she's such an ardent gun owner.
Right.
I want to say also that that's great. These gun laws, again, if you think that like law-abiding gun owners, that's the point, is that they're law-abiding. This kid is a psychopath who went on a shooting spree, and the idea that like a law would necessarily make a difference. He also had, again, a pipe bomb, a Molotov cocktail, carbon carbon dioxide device. He had other weapons as well that would have caused a lot of damage. I don't know how much, whatever he could cause, but like there's a larger issue as well. And to say like we can't talk about mental health, we should talk about mental health. There's young guys in this country that feel that they need to go on a killing spree when a girl rejects them.
Yeah, but
that is also a conversation that should take place.
But I noticed that most of the people in the Republican Party bring up mental health all the time. And my answer to that is there's mentally ill people. I said it before. All over the world, it only happens here. Why? They should be looking into that.
But if you're going on a shooting spree at a school, you're not mentally well.
So is it really about mental illness? I mean, in some cases, I think that we can draw a link between the medications they're taking and their previous history with, counseling, being seen medically for these types of problems. But sometimes it's just an evil person. So we've gotten so far away from understanding that human beings are depraved and wicked that it's impossible for a liberal person, a progressive, to understand that human beings are evil. It's like, no, everyone's really just good. Sometimes circumstances can act together and then the person's mentally ill. No, plenty of people are just evil. They just lay up thinking about evil things. And if left to their own devices, they will bring death and destruction and mayhem. They are their father's children. They're children of the devil. The devil comes to lie, steal, kill, and destroy. And they act out on his impetus, his whims. They're acting out the will of their father, who is Satan. But I mean, just saying that, it's like, who even understands these concepts anymore? It's this whole, everyone's so good. Even MS-13 is good. That's what that's what news heads had to say because Donald Trump said MS-13 were animals. They had to say that MS-13 they were still kind of good. They could be good. But when Donald Trump said there were good people on both sides of the aisle at some white supremacy rally in Charlottesville, now that meant he was a white supremacist. I think he was basically saying the same thing Nancy Pelosi was saying. Well, if there's a spark of divinity in MS-13, then I guess there are both people on sides of whatever aisle can be good at any protest. Do you see how that works? So if you didn't like it in one instance, you shouldn't have liked it in another. And that was not a defense of his comments, and I have never defended those comments, so don't try me. Leave my email box alone. So in this discussion, you've got Meghan McCain, and you've, of course, got Joy Behar. She's coming in hot. She's got all these, ideas about what Republicans can do. But it's not Republicans who are running around shooting up all these joints now, is it? Oh, yeah. Are these heavily Republican areas that are being shot up? No. So just hold down on all the finger pointing about Republicans and the discussion being about mental illness. What have we done? Maybe the reason why we're still talking about mental illness is because we haven't done anything. No one has allocated any additional dollars to opening up hospitals or treatment centers for people who are having these kinds of problems. They haven't changed any laws or regulations about what you can do to get someone committed when you know they're going to kill somebody, but they haven't killed anybody yet. We haven't done anything about any of that stuff. So that's why the discussion still centers around that. So for this hour, we have Stephen Solomon coming up next in the next segment. He's the host of the Stephen Solomon Show. He's going to talk news of the day with us. And then we're going to talk in the last segment about all of the, it's a weird thing that's going on with the revelations that are coming out of the FBI and DOJ about how they basically implanted a mole into the Trump campaign back when President Obama was in office. He knew about it. He authorized it. It's kind of taken the wind out of the sails of their huge announcement that they're doing a multi-project deal with Netflix, Mr. and Mrs. Obama. Yeah, which, by the way, we already canceled Netflix, okay? When we first heard about that, we were like, Now, I have had some people say, oh, well, you could just not watch the shows that they make. Yeah, but the money still goes to make their programming, and so no, thank you. So I don't often quote Eric Erickson. I have definitely read a lot of his work, and I think he's a brilliant individual. We disagree because he's, obviously never Trump, and I'm not. But he has a piece out. I can't tell because it's at themaven.net if it's from today. It's from yesterday, but it's been edited. It's by Eric Erickson, and the title of it is Guns Aren't the Problem. The Collapse of the Morality You Mock is the Problem. I want to share a little bit of it with you because it kind of echoes my sentiments so far that I've been sharing during the show, which is that you can't be a godless barbarian and then get mad when everybody acts like godless barbarians. And you can't start to, you can't pump the brakes and say, I don't like the slippery slide into immorality when you're already down in the pit in the muck and you made the pit, you filled it up with muck and you're the one who's down there spreading it around and saying, I'm sorry, how dare you be offended by homosexual sex? Get down here in this muck, experience it, enjoy it, let it get into you. That's the whole liberal mantra. And it just annoys me to no end that every time something happens that has to do with this kind of depraved ridiculousness, liberals are the first ones to say, well, I don't approve of this or that. You approve of everything. That is the mantra of the Democrats and liberalism right now. You want a little bit of MS-13? That's a spark of divinity. Are they hatcheting people to death, raping girls, cutting the hearts out of their opponents, making people witness it so they can go out and tell everyone else, I saw MS-13 murder a friend of mine? Yeah, but they still have a little spark of divinity. Get a little bit of that up in your neighborhood. You should want it because illegal immigration, it's no big deal. MS-13, not a problem. That is the Democrats right now. Hey, you think it's not okay for grown men who are strangers to be in the family restroom where small children are showering after taking a swim at the YMCA pool? Well, you're just a bigot. You hate transgendered people. That child should be taught and trained how to see naked strangers and be fine with it. Get a little bit of that muck up on you in India. Just take it. You're intolerant. You're a bigot if you don't want small children to see naked men in public places, men they don't know. You don't want your wife showering with a strange man in the bathroom with her? That's because you hate transgenders. That's where we are. Hey, I know you don't think abortion should be family planning. Well, you're bigoted against women. You hate the right to choose. You hate women. You hate yourself. That's where we are. So, I mean, are we really shocked that the children are now running up into the schoolhouses with guns and taking people's lives when they've been taught they're just animals and any urge they might have, they should just fulfill it? That's not what God's word says about us. God doesn't teach us to just fulfill any urge that we have, but liberals do. And you know who's in charge of the schools? The K through 12 public education facilities, the National Education Association, and the liberals. But I mean, by all means, we need to go round up somebody's guns and collect them because that's certainly going to stop kids from acting on these demonic influences that they're having piped into them at school. Be nice to everyone. Keep your hands and feet to yourself. But if you feel like having sex, go ahead and do it because you're just an animal. And by all means, be upset about it. But I'm telling you what they're teaching our kids in public school. I certainly didn't agree with this, didn't want this taught. You want Planned Parenthood to get government funding? You want Planned Parenthood to be legitimate? You want them up in your school buildings? Planned Parenthood and SECUS, they're a non-governmental organization that's connected to them, but not really. They're the ones who are in charge of this. It's just the most graphic, horrifying sex ed programming. And they're working hard to get it into every public school district they can. And they start at the high school level. And then they say, well, kids are coming to high school and they're unprepared for the material, so we need to start teaching it to them in middle school. And then once they get permission to do that, they're like, kids need to learn about homosexual sex and they need to have bananas and demonstrations with condoms and et cetera. They need to start that in kindergarten. That's what they're working on. While you're sitting up mad at me because I'm telling the truth on the radio, they're in your kid's school trying to figure out how they can teach your kindergartner about homosexual sex. Man, it's a hard knock life, isn't it? It's the life you set up. You're voting for this stuff. You're bringing it in. You're accepting it. You're going to have to answer for it too. So Eric Erickson talks about how God is not mocked, and we've been mocking him. He says if it isn't a gun, it would be a knife. If it's not a knife, it would be a car. If not a car, it would be homemade pipe bombs. People are desperate to grasp onto something to stop the monstrous kids who storm into schools and gun down their peers. And so they're latching on to getting rid of guns. They think, we have to just do something. And so just doing something means getting rid of guns. But the situation won't get better with the banning of guns. Ban the guns and the next kid will just find a new way to make headlines by killing other kids that he hates. Point to other countries all you want with exasperated angst. It doesn't happen there. And you'll just be noting that we are not them and our problems are not their problems. I mean, hear to that statement. I'm so tired of people talking about what's happening in Australia. Australia doesn't have this problem, but they're overrun by refugees. They've got a huge Islamic practice problem in Australia. The people who live there are absolutely railing against it. They don't want it, but their government that they've elected is shoehorning these people in there like nobody's business. And they've got a bunch of them stuck on an island that they want America to take. So they have their own problems. So they may not have mass shootings going on right now, but they have other kinds of Islamic terrorism type attacks going on in Australia. Every country has problems. The issue is not whether or not we are like Germany or Great Britain or Australia. The issue is this is America, and if you're tired of seeing mass shootings happen, then you have to be willing to admit that, number one, you're part of the problem. You've been voting for people who brought this in on us. And then second of all, the answer is not inanimate objects, tools, guns, box trucks. That's not the answer. Regulation isn't the answer. It's that people who want to come into schools and have Bible studies and have Christian-themed youth groups, people who want to bring this kind of content to kids and give them an option. In other words, you have 30 after-school offerings. We want there to be 31. We want to have a Bible club here. You sit down. Stop fighting it. You don't want to read the Bible, then don't. But there may be some kids in that building who desperately want to have something else. They might give it a try, and you don't understand. You don't want it, but they might. You're all about choice until it comes to somebody choosing to read God's word or share the gospel or memorize a piece of Bible scripture. You're totally for dismembering babies and selling their body parts off so people can buy Lamborghinis, but not okay with just the simple act of saying, you're free to pray over your food. I mean, any kid can pray over their food. It's not our right to tell you can't bless or ask God's blessing over your food. The liberals can't even find it in themselves to do that. You can't even say, I don't have the right to tell a kid they can't pray over their meal. So Eric Erickson goes on to quote the Bible. He says, and since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Sound familiar? God is not mocked, and our society has been mocking him for some time. From the collapse of the family, a culture of death that champions abortion on demand, a growing hostility towards people of faith, championing deviancy while normalcy is defined as deviant, to attacks on the two-parent heterosexual nuclear household, porn culture. All of these things point to a rotten society. And these are the kinds of things that happen in a rotten society. You can't have the dirt and the grime without the smell. It's like saying, I'm going to install big, huge 20-ton dumpsters in every suburban neighborhood in the country, and then being surprised when everyone has a lower quality of life because their neighborhoods stink. Dumpsters contain garbage. Garbage stinks. You spread garbage around. Don't be surprised when everything stinks. All right, we're going to be back with our guests. We're going to have Stephen Solomon with us and so much more. Stay there.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki Addison of Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. Family is so important to everything. I mean, think about it. Right after God created Adam, he made family by creating Eve as his wife.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference this summer. We'll have a full slate of experts to help encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family.
Our speakers include Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, and more.
We'll even be there.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference will be Friday and Saturday, August 17th and 18th at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi. Come help us fight back against the enemy's direct attack on marriage and family. That's the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference, put on by Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Up next, Carol Swain with 2 minutes to think about it. From poverty to professor, from GED to PhD, a bold Christian speaking truth to power. Here's Carol with today's 2 minutes.
Hello, folks. There was a time when pretty much all diplomacy was seen as something best left to a small clique of lifetime professionals. No average Joe needed to apply. We sent Henry Kissinger. They sent Andrei Gromyko. And the long and involved talks would ensue. Treaties with fancy names would eventually be signed, yet not much looked all that different. That, they would tell you, was the art of diplomacy, and that seemed to work okay when dealing with nations who had a genuine stake in the diplomatic game. Others, like North Korea, see our old-time diplomacy as a means of picking the pockets of our good intentions. Along comes President Donald Trump and the new diplomacy of finding out what someone really wants. Kim Jong-un is the third of the Kim family who have been running an impoverished North Korea since just after World War II. The Kims don't seem to want better conditions for their starving population, the U.S. alone having donated about 2.3 million metric tons of food since 1995. President Trump's straightforward message of the consequences of Kim Jong-un not giving up his nuclear weapons program let us find out what Kim really wants. His power more than his nukes. Nukes or no nukes, Kim likes being a dictator. Kim also sees that doing a deal with the president is safer than calling his bluff, because bluffs just aren't part of the new diplomacy.
To learn more about Carol and the Carol Swain Foundation, visit carolmswain.net and make sure you follow her on Facebook at Professor Carol M. Swain and on Twitter at Carol M. Swain.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. StacyOnTheRight.com is a website where you can subscribe and check out all the cool content we have there. The newsletter is simply fantastic. You want to subscribe so you can get your hands on that once a week. And AFR.net, that's the parent company. You can go there and check everything out on their website as well. It's good to be with you. And I want to have our next guest. We have Stephen Solomon, host of the Stephen Solomon Show. Stephen, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Stacey, good to talk with you again.
Good to talk to you. So let's dig into some news of the day. You have this intel background, intelligence, from your time serving in the armed forces, and thank you for your service. It's wonderful to have you on today to talk a little bit about this scandal. And I don't hear that term being used on MSNBC or CNN, but to me it is an utter scandal that President Obama knew that the FBI had placed a mole of sorts, a spy, in the Trump campaign to try to catch them doing something wrong.
Yeah, let's just be honest and call it what it is. It's disgusting. It's something that we had looked at a little bit earlier in Trump's presidency, just at the very beginning, and some people dismissed it. They thought Trump was maybe acting like a conspiracy theorist or just doing what he likes to do, that Twitter kind of talk. But the fact of the matter is, the FBI was definitely spying on him. And I said this a year and a half ago. I even wrote a blog about it. And I talked a little bit about, this is what's happening. And now it's come full circle. The word I use is disgusting.
So what exactly happens at this point? Because one thing I've noticed about the entire storyline is that whenever President Obama is mentioned, he remains unscathed. It's as if he's got some kind of special plastic coating that prevents any of this mud from sticking to him. He's just inked a multi-project deal with Netflix, he and his wife. She's actually going to talk about salads or something, healthy eating. He's going to be doing something which I noticed today in the announcement. They were very, very clear to say that he would not be commenting on conservatives or the current president of the United States. Instead, he would be spurring on conversations about topics that Americans face, like immigration, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, don't cancel Netflix because of this. It's really going to be great. I've already canceled, by the way.
You've already canceled that.
Oh, yeah. And we were some of the first people to get on Netflix. Like, we have probably a stone in the Netflix lobby because we've been there so long. And now we're done. We've been done.
Where are you turning to? What's going to be your media source here?
Well, I got PureFlix, but it's been, so the kids love Netflix because they can watch the, like, Parks and Rec and things like that are in syndication, and they don't have to wait until the show comes on TV to watch it. You can just watch it whenever you want. My husband and I really prefer Amazon Prime, so it wasn't hard for me to let it go. But the kids were pretty upset initially when I told them, I'm like, we're letting this go. And they're like, what? We don't even have Hulu. I'm like, we don't have Hulu, and we ain't going to have this. It's over.
Well, good luck on finding what you need.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of weird that he's creating this. I saw the New York Times post, and it was a little strange that he's making essentially lifestyle documentaries. This is essentially what it's going to be, like Oprah kind of stuff, which, you know, if that's what he wants to do, I got to be honest with you, I'd rather he be doing that than sitting around creating chaos and havoc for Trump and whoever else comes afterwards, which I really thought he was going to do more, but he hasn't really gone down that road, so I'm glad to see that. I'm not going to be watching it. I have no desire to watch it. I know a lot of people out there are going to be, you know, raving about whatever it is. He could literally put out just a picture of himself for 2 hours, and it just rotates to a new picture, and people would give him an Oscar.
Okay, yeah, that's true. He does have the ability to bamboozle folks. The reason I am upset about it is because he is a very polarizing figure. And yes, he was the president of the United States, but by giving him a Netflix deal, it legitimizes him and connects him to the entertainment industry where he's a former president. So if he's not going to do politics, and remember George Bush, he was a former president. He was still pretty young when he left office. What he did was he took up painting, he started riding in the triathlon things with the Wounded Warriors, and he really kind of left the public eye for a bit to give himself a chance to just be a human being again. And apparently Obama's not going to favor us with that same kind of treatment. We are going to have to constantly be looking at him and listening to him and Michelle Obama, and my response to that is, I don't want to. That's why I'm willing to let Netflix go.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think this is a product of the generation we live in. We're in the social media generation, the entertainment consumption generation, where it's all about more and more and more. And if you're going to have a presence in this world online, you got to constantly have that presence. So I think this is really catering to maybe this younger generation. And the answer, I believe, is going to be conservatives are going to have to do the same thing. People who value the Constitution, you know, the right type of thinking politically. I think the only answer is not to maybe hide from it. Stacey, we got to play the game. You know, it's kind of like the internet. Conservatives are really, really good at having online conversations with people because the less arguments don't make sense. They eventually fall apart. So we got to do the same thing with media. We got to create our own media sources. And I think Donald Trump wants to create the Celebrity Apprentice when he's out of office. I'll watch it. I'll watch it again.
Yeah, well, he was really good before he was president. He actually had really good television offerings. I enjoyed him during the first run, which was the original Apprentice, where he fired people, and we got to know Donald Trump and his, you know, golden penthouse apartment. We got to see his family in action. I enjoyed that. My experience with Barack Obama is strictly from him being the president of the United States, and I don't find him entertaining at all. I think it's one of those things where so he's going to be there, and I have to control the amount of that kind of chaos that I let in. I'm already online. I'm doing all that other stuff. And so I'm just choosing to extract myself from having to interact with the Obamas on this in this type of setting. So I would also ask you about, so when we talk about this Cambridge professor who was the informant, but he hasn't yet produced anything. We talk about the end. I saw something about Rudy Giuliani saying that the end of the Mueller investigation is near, and then there's been some correction that's been issued by USA Today or Reuters or somebody who's like, yeah, he don't know what he's talking about. It's going to be this time. Do we actually know when this thing's going to be over?
So Mueller has decided he wants to be done by September 1st, which is, he says he doesn't want to influence the midterm elections. I don't know how serious this is going to be. We have, for roughly 2 years, and by the time the thing finishes, it'll be 2 years. For the first 2 years of Trump's presidency, he has been under investigation with not an iota of evidence. There's not been anything. As a matter of fact, we can go the opposite route. And there have been numerous things that Trump and others have pointed out to show that the deck was actually stacked against him. So for 2 years, he has been investigated for ties to Russia. We haven't seen any ties to Russia. Ties to fix the evidence to fix the election. None of that came out. And for 2 years, we've been dealing with this. So if Mueller wraps up by September 1st, I'd be surprised. I bet if Democrats had their way, they would investigate him for 4 years until the very end. But the best part about this is this. Trump has actually been incredibly effective as a president, even though this hasn't been the happiest 2 years because the shadow has been hanging over him. It's actually been a very effective 2 years if you look at what's actually been done.
It has been. I've been sharing the progress that's been made by this president. I think one of the most stunning changes that we've been able to see is how he's been able to sidestep the media, who gives him 91% negative coverage, and go straight to Americans and maintain a support base, which has seen his poll numbers go up quite a bit, which it should be impossible for his poll numbers to go up, yet he's been able to pull that off.
Yeah, he has really been, and honestly, it's because a lot of the American people they're kind of like you with Netflix, Stacey. They're tuning out what they know to be garbage, right? They know things are flippant and made up, and so a lot of the American people are going. We expect the media to be Trump haters. We expect the media to treat him like he's some evil, in cahoots with Russia kind of guy, and so they tune it out. They just tune it out and they focus on what's actually happening. And the truth is, what's happening right now is people's paychecks are going up. We're seeing increased security both around the world and the United States, and people like that. And so that's what a lot of people focus on.
So turning to the midterms, I know you must have seen the numerous clips of Nancy Pelosi and a couple of others in leadership, like Maxine Waters, but a couple of the others, saying that as soon as they take the reins in November, they're going to impeach the president. They don't even pretend that they have a good reason for doing it. They're just going to do it because they feel like it's their right. And that they're going to raise taxes. How's that going to work out for them in November?
I think it would go the same way that the Bill Clinton things happened when they talked about impeaching him. It didn't work out for Republicans to claim that as their platform, right? We're gonna take back the House. We're going to take the Senate. We're going to impeach Bill Clinton. It didn't work out for Republicans. It was Al Green, he's a representative from Texas, a Democrat from Texas, who kind of got the ball rolling. He said the first thing we're going to do is impeach President Trump. That will backfire, especially if the economy is going well. Honestly, a lot of the stuff we talk about, and it's fun, and for people like you and me, and it's our livelihood, and we talk about it, it's all well and good, but for most people, it usually goes back to the economy. And if the economy is doing well, and it's rocking it right now, and if security looks like it's doing well, Al Green and Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters can yell and scream and set their hair on fire all day long, but that won't help them come the midterms.
And what is the real, like, from your gut, what do you see the midterms looking like? I saw a new number today saying they expect 22 seats to go to the Democrats in the House. They're not expecting the Republicans to lose the Senate. What do you see happening in the House?
That's kind of close to where I'm at. I actually think Republicans might even pick up some Senate seats. I'm kind of in that camp. We'll see what happens. There's some blue senators in some red states that are dangerous right now. So I could see us actually pick up a Senate seat or two. I do think we're going to lose House seats, but I don't think we're going to lose the House. It's important though. This right here is one reason, Stacey, especially with rumors that Justice Kennedy might retire early summer. It's very possible that swing justice could go away. And if we want a conservative, a constitutionalist in the Supreme Court, and he decides to retire in the next month or two, we want Trump to pick the guy. We've already seen him do it with Neil Gorsuch. It was a good pick. A good justice went in. We want him picking the next person. And in order for that to happen, we've got to maintain the Senate. And so I think we're going to keep the Senate. I don't know about that. I don't think we're going to lose the House, but I don't think we're going to add seats this swing term. But, again, it's all important for people to get out there and pay attention.
It is. I've been encouraging people to remember that an impeachment isn't necessarily, the Democrats know this as well, an impeachment isn't necessarily the fact that they would remove him, but they'd be able to cripple him by holding impeachment hearings and bringing up things that have nothing to do with anything and basically paralyze the nation for months on end with the hearings themselves. They don't need the 67 votes in the Senate to actually, do something about the impeachment to remove him. They just need to cripple him while he's in office.
Okay, you just nailed it right there. That right there, that was spot on. What the Democrats want to do is stall the country for 2 years because they believe they can retake the White House. So they want to stall it, and they want to make sure that nothing happens. No more justices, no more legislation, nothing good for conservatives or Republicans. Just take the House and stall it. So let a battle cry go out right now on the Stacey on the Right show here. If you care about the Constitution, if you care about limited government, get out there and make sure we keep the House and the Senate.
Yeah, because someone just pointed out online, because you know how it is. You remember it, but you're not really remembering it up front. It's like, hey, this is information, in my long-term storage. I remember Bill Clinton being impeached. I remember him staying in office because the will wasn't there in the Senate to remove him. And then it's like a vague, nebulous, like blank for me. And then I was like, wait a minute. I do remember. It was like all we heard about, the dress, the human, deposits on the dress, the testing, the DNA testing. What is the meaning of the word is? And this went on for months and months and months. And even people in my family who are hardcore Democrats were so angry about the way the Republicans were raking him over the coals that they stopped caring about the fact that he'd had the affair and lied about it. They were basically just wanting it to be over. I'll give you the last one. We have about 60 seconds.
Yeah, well, I think everything you said is absolutely right. And I think if Democrats keep this up, I kind of hope they do. I hope that they just run on the platform of we hate Trump, because that would be really well. Because Republicans are over on the other side saying we're going to increase security, we're going to build a strong economy, we're going to redo the trade deals, we're going to establish security between North and South Korea. I mean, Republicans have a lot of good ideas. Trump's actually doing well. And the Senate and the House, if they can be in Republican hands, we're going to see this go on. So if the Democrats want to run on the platform of we hate Trump, I don't see it working out for them.
I hope not. So how can everybody find you? Website, Twitter, all that good jazz?
Sure. Thanks for that. You can find me at StephenSolomon.org. I'm on Instagram at RealStephenSolomon. I'm on Twitter at Stephen L. Solomon. And you can find the Facebook page on Twitter, on Facebook, Stephen Solomon Show.
Perfect. All right. So we often have these good chats. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I think we need the rallying cry. You've made an excellent case for us to not have, be hopeless going into the midterms. We actually have a chance, and we should capitalize on that. It's been great to chat with you. Have a great week, Stephen.
Stacey, always good to talk with you. You're incredible.
Thanks, Stephen. All right. And Stephen Solomon, host of the Stephen Solomon Show. Great to chat with him again. Lots of expertise there from his background in the military and military intelligence. So we're really glad to have him on the program. So what we have going on now is one last segment of the show for today, for Tuesday. I am every day getting closer to the graduation of our daughter from high school. She's going to graduate from high school. I'm on the bullet train to Freaky Town, you guys. I don't regret it. I'm not sad. I'm happy, but I'm also savoring this moment because it's coming up, and it's something that, honestly, if you think about it, when you have a child, when you have your first child, you don't think about high school graduation or college or any of that stuff. You're just thinking, how do I manage this little bundle of, like, this is a whole person. I have a person. That's what you're thinking about. And then it starts to become more real when they get to middle school and you realize, oh my goodness, high school's next. They get to high school and it's such a whirly bird. They're not, you don't think of graduation until they're like a sophomore. Then you realize, oh my goodness, it's coming. And you start thinking about all the things. Have I taught her everything she needs to know about this? And you can get mired down in regret or worrying about the time that you've spent. Have you spent it wisely? And fortunately for me, God has sent some women into my life who have really helped me get from that point where she was a sophomore to now where I know it is all in God's hands and I believe it. I've known it all along, but I believe it now. So this weekend is going to be fantastic. So we'll have more information about the remainder of the week and all that good stuff. We're going to be talking about this surveillance issue when we get back. Stacey on the Right.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
Prayer is vitally important in a marriage.
After I was named head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Lauren and I felt pulled in 1,000 different directions. Prayer really helped us during that transition. We prayed on the phone together during the day, and the kids and Lauren would pray together in the evenings as a family on the nights I came home late from practice.
Tony and I have prayed together since the beginning of our marriage. It hasn't always been consistent, but it's a priority that we cherish. So don't let a hectic schedule or other excuses get in the way of going to God in prayer. It's the key to success for any marriage.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left, just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk. Just as David's mighty man Benaiah chased down a lion into a pit on a snowy day, Lion Chasers champions uncommon men and women of faith who are unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power in these dark and evil days. Never before has there been such a need for people of faith to draw a line in the sand with the sword of truth. Lion Chasers, the intersection of faith and public policy with Lonnie Poindexter. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
And my father, your great-grandfather, fought in World War II.
Really?
He was a gunner on the big ship out in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Your great-grandmother did her part, too.
Was she on a ship?
Oh, no. She stayed back home. She and a lot of her friends worked really hard in a factory because the men had gone off to war.
Ooh.
And they held scrap metal drives to help in the war effort. The folks back home were heroes, too.
Here at the American Family Association, we consider you the heroes back home. As you fulfill your responsibility of caring for your family day to day, your partnership with us is crucial as we fight the enemies of freedom in America. Thank you for your commitment to the American Family Association.
Grandpa, what's a scrap metal drive?
Let's get some cookies, and I'll tell you all about it.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
What will happen there? Do you have any insight to that?
Well, with the revelations that our campaign may have been the subject of surveillance by the FBI, the president, I think, is grateful that the Department of Justice is going to have the Inspector General look into it and determine and ensure that there was no surveillance done for political purposes against our campaign. I think it would be very troubling to millions of Americans if that took place, but we're very confident that as the Inspector General has been doing their work looking at the conduct of the FBI during that period, that by adding their focus to this, that we'll get to the bottom of it, because the American people have a right to know.
So is there any suggestion that there'll be a second special counsel that would be dedicated to that endeavor?
I think at this point, the Department of Justice has made it clear that they'll be expanding the Inspector General's current investigation to include these allegations.
Welcome back to the program. Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right. We are in the last segment. If you'd like to call in and weigh in on any of the subjects we've covered today on the show, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. I want to just quickly cycle through here. We were going over this article by Eric Erickson, and as we all know, he is adamantly opposed to President Trump. And in the article, he does delve into that. He addresses conservatives for electing Donald Trump, and then he addresses people on the left who feel that Christians are all hypocrites and sinners, but refuse to look at their own sin, and that they've deified government, that government is to fix this, it's to fix that. And then when government doesn't fix it, they just say, well, you need more government. The fact is, a lot of the relationships that used to exist back when, and again, when I point to back when kids, had gun racks and there were gun clubs and that was also during a time when, we were still largely segregated. Blacks were relegated to inferior schools. We weren't free to move about the country, and we could easily be, caught up in all kinds of violence just based upon the color of our skin. And it was a dangerous, horrible time in America for Black people. We survived that. So when I talk about that time frame, I'm not hearkening back for any of that. I'm talking about when families were stronger, because as bad as those times were, Black families were very strong back then. White families were very strong back then. The family unit was largely intact. So we're always going to have problems as a society, but it's okay for us to say, well, historically speaking, more people, statistically speaking, there was higher church attendance. More people attended church. More people believed in God. And I don't mean this nebulous belief in God where someone says, are you a Christian? And you say, yes, I'm a Christian because you're not a Muslim or you're not Jewish or you're not. It's not a statement of, I'm delineating myself culturally. It meant, yeah, I believe in the saving power of Jesus Christ. I've given myself to the Lord. I'm working every day to be more obedient and to allow him to sanctify me. That kind of Christianity. And as we see less and less of that kind of Christianity, we see more and more of people turning, you've got to have something to worship. The God-shaped hole will not go unfilled. People fill it with entertainment. They fill it with people. They fill it with events, vacations, social media, shopping, food. They fill it with whatever. Dogs. The worship of dogs is like off the chain. And I'm saying that as someone, we have a dog and he's super cute. It's not about me hating animals, but people will literally elevate anything that they like into that deified position that should only be occupied by our Father in heaven. They put someone else there. And for millions of Americans, it's the government. But the government hasn't fixed anything. Yes, there are things the government can do that can make our lives better. And government it's a part of our lives here in America. We're not getting rid of it. But we don't need to deify it and look to it as the source. And so I've got, some things about this piece that I loved, some things that I think he said that were very, very true. And there's some things in here where I'm kind of like, yeah, your never Trumpism is showing a lot. But he still has, at the end, a call for us to basically acknowledge that if we want to stop kids from gunning each other down, we have to build local relationships, build community, help restore local families, build communities open to outsiders. Stop thinking that Washington will solve our problems for us. He says the guns aren't going anywhere, but the sense of isolation and rage can go away without a government program. He's right. And I don't say that the guns aren't going anywhere because I worship guns or it's just you have to understand when someone's railing against the wind or banging their head up against a brick wall, the head will give. Your head will not withstand a sustained altercation with a brick wall. So if you know that the fact that there are 400 to 600 million guns in this country, that's a known quantity, that's a fact, then that means you have to look elsewhere for the solution to the problem. We have so many laws, and we have so many more people than the laws who are willing to break them. So as we were coming back in, we heard Vice President Pence talking about Americans having a right to know if the Trump campaign was surveilled. We also have a right to know why, what came of that surveillance, if anything, and what's going to be done to punish the individuals who instituted it. I'm frankly disturbed by the lack of accountability that we see for all of these wrong actions, from Hillary Clinton's emails and Benghazi and the gun running scheme. There's been so much where people are just getting away with it. The IRS targeting conservative groups, Facebook targeting conservative people. They've literally gotten off the hook now. They're just off in the wind doing whatever they want. So Jonathan Turley, who you guys know, he's a constitutional law professor and an attorney, and he is brilliant. I don't agree with him 100%, but he's often the one lone voice speaking about the legality or illegality of something by using the law itself to make his determination instead of his feelings or his political ideology, et cetera, et cetera. So Jonathan Turley was on television and he was talking about President Trump being correct when he said his campaign was under surveillance and that it is legitimate to object to that. It's number 6.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. For the past 18 months, Democrats in the Congress and their PR consultants in the press have told you that Donald Trump won the 2016 presidential election, mostly because his campaign somehow colluded with the government of Vladimir Putin. To prove that, they have brought the usual business of government here in Washington basically to a standstill and launched the most divisive special counsel investigation in the history of the country. It has now gone on for more than a year. And yet, remarkably, to this very day, we still have no proof of collusion. Just this weekend, Democrat Mark Warner of the Senate Intel Committee, who is someone everybody in Washington pretends is impressive, was offered a chance on television to provide actual evidence of Russian collusion. He declined. Of course he did. They always do. You've seen this before, but tonight we have something different for you. We have a Democrat who says he has the smoking gun. 3 months ago, we made this offer to Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, who is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Watch. If you have any evidence at all of collusion, any, and I don't care how small it is, I will give the floor to you, and I mean that, because I want to wrap this up. I'm sure you do, too. So we offered the congressman a full half hour live on this show if he could give us evidence, real evidence, of Russian collusion by Trump's campaign. And to his credit, tonight, he is taking us up on that offer. There is nothing staged about this conversation, the one you're about to see. If the congressman has proof that Trump people colluded with a hostile foreign power, we will be the first to call for indictments. But if he doesn't have that proof, if after all this time there is still no real evidence of collusion, then we will know for certain that this whole thing is a lie that has badly damaged our country.
And so I didn't get audio of that for you. It was quite a lengthy thing that they went through together. It's kind of amazing. And for all of the different things that we have going on, all of the different information that we have access to, the big deal here is that if it is possible to see, so you're sitting in the White House as a Republican and you see the general election coming up, you've got a Democrat and a Republican running, and you want to stop that Republican from, or you want to stop that Democrat from coming into office, or you want to severely cripple their campaign, the Democrats have now set the precedent for either political side to engage in this behavior unless it's punished. And I remember saying something similar to this about a year ago, right here on this program. I said, what disturbs me the most about this is that if we don't prosecute anyone and we don't punish anyone, then that means anytime you want to use the government to hurt the other side of the political aisle, you can do so. And there's really no reason for the Democrats to whine and complain about it. No more references to Watergate. No more discussions about prosecuting people for doing wrong. I said if they scratched this scandal long enough, they'd find Democrats. And now it's not just any old Democrats. It is the utmost tippy-top Democrats. Barack Obama, he knew this was going on. He could have easily said, now, wait a minute now, that's a bridge too far. We're not going to put a mole in the Trump campaign. He'll hang himself. Let it ride. But they couldn't do that. So now here's a quote from Jonathan Turley. Tucker Carlson asked him, do Americans have a right to know if they were spied on? And Jonathan Turley says, I think that they do. These are very serious allegations and they're unprecedented. We don't know what the truth is. Maybe there was a valid reason for the investigation. Maybe they used valid means, but we should want to know. So he talks about this being a case of willful blindness, in that we have confirmation that Trump was correct when he said over a year ago that he had people in his campaign that were under surveillance. It turns out it was much broader than what he thought and what those in observation thought. Even though people like former DNI James Clapper and others in the Obama administration denied it, which, isn't it a felony to lie to someone who works for the FBI? Oh, but I guess they weren't talking to anybody at the FBI. See that double standard there? Everyone calls Trump a liar, but he's right about this. So now you have an individual who reportedly offered to be an advisor in a campaign when it was an asset for the FBI, the CIA, or both. I can't imagine that what justice official would sign off on that. He closes off by saying, now you can try to split this as you may, whether this is an investigation or surveillance, but from Trump's standpoint, there is a legitimate issue. You can tell a victim that this isn't a mugging, just a forced divestiture. But it sure feels like a mugging unless you can prove the contrary. So there has to be a place where no matter what your political ideology, you hear about this and you think, okay, that's too much. And I remain willing to consider the fact that there could have been something wrong in the Trump campaign, that someone was doing something wrong. I've been waiting for the evidence to surface. Not that I want it, but that if it was to surface, I would be prepared to say, okay, somebody's got to be held accountable. But it's been over a year and we have nothing. Nothing. Except new things to teach us just how desperately the Democrats didn't want a President Trump, as much as they built him up. And that's the thing. When we've talked about that scripture before. You lay a trap for your enemy and you get caught in the trap. The Bible verse says you roll a boulder in wait and you're going to let the boulder roll down on your enemy. But instead, the boulder rolls back on you and you're crushed instead. So when we're out there attempting to lay a trap for our enemy, as Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and everybody who's involved in this scandal, James Clapper, Jim Comey, they were all trying to trap Trump. And they were sure that he was dirty and they could get him. And instead, I don't know if they're going to get away with it or not, but they're definitely getting themselves. Because all we're learning is how hard they tried to keep him from actually putting his hand up and getting sworn in as the president and taking a place behind that resolute desk. He did it anyway, but this is just stunning. And it's disgusting. I will borrow Stephen Solomon's terminology for it. It's disgusting. So lots of other top news of the day. Apparently the lava in the Hawaii volcanic eruption is reaching, it's getting close to the Hawaii power plant. So that's dangerous. And then there's also obviously the big story. I can't believe it's true that Netflix is going to destroy their brand by connecting themselves to the Obamas. And they were doing so well with their original content. I don't get it. And then, of course, news unreported by large media that Venezuelans are buying bus tickets out after Maduro won his sham re-election. So more Venezuelans leaving the country for good. All right, that's the show. We have cool things in the works for you. So I hope you're going to enjoy your evening tonight. Be blessed. Be back with you tomorrow.